we now move over to the Ringside Report. Trying to give it a bit of gravitas there, Carl. So, Carl, you've been kind enough to sort of drive most of these segments. So, do you want to kick off our Ringside Report?
Yeah, so I think it was pretty light, in the rumor mill and in the newsroom, if you will, this week. I think all the focus has kind of just been on WrestleMania and the kind of fallout from that, really. But I mentioned earlier on there was a bit of breaking news that we found today around Rhea Ripley. So it looks like she's Australian, and it looks like her work visa has actually expired, so she's had to return to Australia.
Right. That's I'm sure they'll find a way around that. I don't know how. I'm literally no expert in the visa situations, but WWE would, I imagine, do everything they could to resolve that. But yeah, I mean, surely she's going to have to go back for an amount of time. It might be a good time for her to have a break right after Mania, and given the COVID-19 situation. Yeah, that's a shocking one, to be fair. Is she even in a position to fly? Are flights still going? Can you fly?
I mean,
I don't know.
I think she's back there, so she's got there somehow. But I'm guessing she's going to have to reapply, like, for another work visa, and obviously in conjunction with WWE. But then there's however long that takes, with all the COVID stuff going on, and then for her to actually have all that approved and be granted the green card and being able to come over and stuff. So yeah, mad,
crazy. Right, so there's a shock for you guys. This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to clickbait you when we put it on YouTube. I'm going to put Rhea Ripley leaves WWE, just to make you fucking listen.
That's how some of the other guys do it. Names will not be mentioned.
Nope.
But yeah, cool.
I've been looking forward to this one because we touched on it before, but we said we mentioned it in the Ringside Report. So, do you want to mention the controversy around the Randy Edge match? Randy Edge. Do you remember when Edge was Randy? Sorry,
puns. So I think there was a certain part of this match that ruffled a few feathers. So as we know from the guided tour of the Performance Center that was given to us in the 40 minutes, there is a fitness and kind of workout area in the back of the Performance Center, which happens to have some weight equipment, like a weight machine. And one of the spots that was pulled off in the match effectively had Randy Orton put Edge, his arm and his neck in some of the kind of
like the
wire
mechanisms, isn't it? Yeah, like the wires or the. I don't know. As you know, me and Carl hit the gym an awful lot, so we know exactly what we're talking about here.
Of course.
Yeah, some of the ropey bits.
Yeah. So the ropey bits basically were tied around Edge's neck, and he had his arm looped through and stuff like that. And I think a lot of people kind of saw this as a little bit controversial with ultimately what happened in the the death of Chris Benoit. So he obviously well documented as kind of double murder suicide, and he was found in his house kind of hanging from his weight equipment. And obviously there's just been an episode of the Dark Side of the Ring, I think it's called, little docuseries that's specifically focused on Chris Benoit. So from a timing standpoint as well, it's kind of fresh again in a lot of people's minds. But yeah, apparently them kind of doing that kind of ruffled a few feathers, in the sense it kind of brought up kind of bad omens from what happened in that kind of tragedy.
I don't know how you feel about this one, Carl, and I can totally understand how people have made that connection, but I only made that connection when other people pointed it out.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't think WWE I don't think people are thinking they've done it deliberately by any means, but I don't think they've thought about it, because honestly, if I'd not have seen it or heard about this, I wouldn't have thought nothing of that spot. I wouldn't have connected it to Benoit at all. Now, that's just me personally. I don't know if I don't know if at the time you thought, oh, that's a bit, but certainly for me, I didn't connect this to Benoit until other people were going, oh, that's a bit close to the knuckle. And you go, I suppose it is kind of similar to that, but I don't know. For me, it doesn't. It feel like a lot of people are seeing seeing the connection more than the connection actually being there. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think. It didn't. Obviously, it wasn't at the forefront of my mind when I watched the match. So I don't know whether it's just people who've happened to have watched that documentary recently. I don't know whether it discusses it on there, perhaps. And it's fresh.
Could be a case of some very unfortunate timing then.
Yeah, but I think, I don't know. It's one of them. I think people will get offended by anything. It's what can you do? Do you know what I mean? It's one of those things. Maybe they should have someone kind of vetting these things, and whoever signed off on the matches, maybe it's like a little bit of a slap on the wrist of maybe you should have picked up on that potentially. But it's one of those. You can think about every possible thing that someone might get offended by. It's just you've got to, if it's not in the forefront of your mind, how would you ever know to think about it? I guess.
Yeah, no, that's a fair point. Yeah.
Cool. So then the next item on the list, so our old pal Tyson Fury has come out and said that apparently he was actually meant to be at WrestleMania this year. So I think
I think we'd actually heard some rumours to that effect, hadn't we, before everything kicked off with the whole coronavirus.
Yeah, so I think we alluded to it, and we were kind of given our kind of predictions for. It might have even been the Elimination Chamber match. I think I'd heard a few things and said that I think because obviously Braun was going 3-on-1, I thought Tyson Fury would get involved in some way with the Braun. And I think, to be fair, there was definitely something going to happen with Braun, because that's probably why Braun was free, on WrestleMania.
Makes a bit of sense. Like, he was always going to be there to do that gimmicky celebrity thing, and then that sort of fell through.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, they didn't have anything for Braun because Tyson Fury couldn't be involved, and then just so happened he fucking walked his way into a championship, right place, right time. But interesting. I think, he's fresh off the win against Deontay Wilder, and he's a very big star. He's the number one heavyweight in the world, so, and he's a massive WWE fan. So I don't see their kind of relationship ending anytime soon. I think as soon as this COVID stuff's out the way, that we are going to see Tyson Fury back in some capacity. How do you feel about that?
Are we going to see him go up against Braun for the title?
I mean, would you put it past them? Let's be honest.
I really wouldn't. I really would not. I've no issue with it. I never have any issue with the whole celebrity involvement. What I don't want them to do, and it's a mistake WCW made many times. I say many times. Certainly one notable time for me is when they try and put titles on them and legitimize them as wrestlers. And don't get me wrong, Tyson Fury is he's a serious boxer, so I'm sure this is as far as sports go. This is more entertainment than anything. So I don't think he'd really need to care about titles and stuff, but I do have that little underlying fear that they would do something like that. But I never have any issue with celebrity involvements. It'd be nice to see him back in some capacity. It always tries to bring these sort of things are always to try and bring viewers to WWE, so I'm all for that. But what I don't want them to do is, because Braun's got the title at the moment, is to try and do something with that. I wouldn't be too keen.
I don't know what you're talking about. It's WWE putting championships on celebrities. It's not like Rob Grant. Oh yeah, Gronk, 24/7 champion.
Yeah, see,
maybe.
But look at WCW probably has the worst of all when they put the title on David Arquette.
Yeah,
that did not work, and it did not work for so many reasons. And WWE have seen that mistake. They saw that mistake way back when. So hopefully they don't try and pull that kind of shit. I don't mind so much with the Gronk with a hokey title like the 24/7 title, but you can't use one of your big titles and use it in that way. I'm not saying they will. It's purely speculation, but I just worry because Braun is obviously usually the foil to Tyson.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be an interesting kind of way that they're going to bring him into the mix. I think it probably lined up quite nicely on whatever they were going to do at WrestleMania, because they already had that history with Braun and stuff. But now that he is champ, then do they go a different direction? Do they get him involved with someone else? Or remains to be seen. But it sounds like he will be involved in some capacity.
Awesome.
So the next one. So apparently, there's been rumors today that WWE are planning on going back to the Performance Center on Friday to tape a significant amount of Raw, SmackDown, and NXT tapings that will apparently take them all the way through to May, which is just before Money in the Bank. But then there's also, I think there was some contrasting reports around Money in the Bank as well.
Yeah, I mean, the Money in the Bank one makes a lot of sense. I understand, WWE getting as much taped as they can. That does make a lot of sense. And obviously the next big pay-per-view is Money in the Bank. And it's one of their most bankable pay-per-views as well. No pun intended. it's a money match. People love the Money in the Bank. Again, another pun, unintentional. But given the format of Money in the Bank as we typically know it, it's hard to put that match together with the current situation. And the suggestion, and I don't know if it's been confirmed just yet, but the suggestion certainly is that they will have to cancel or postpone, certainly, the Money in the Bank pay-per-view. So I don't know whether they're going to replace it or what they're going to do to build up to it. Or Carl and I, before we started recording the podcast, talked about, can they do a sort of a smaller version, in which you have only the 5 participants rather than how many do they normally have in a Money in the Bank match?
I think minimum is 6, but there can be up to like 8 or 10 in some cases.
It's normally bigger numbers. So we've seen that they seem to get away with. They certainly got away with the Fatal 5-Way at Mania. So as far as regs go, I think they could probably get away with that. But whether they truly go ahead and just postpone it or cancel it, I mean, I wouldn't like to see it not happen at all. That's the only thing I'd say on that. It'd be a shame because it's an enjoyable pay-per-view. It's certainly not one of the big pay-per-views as far as tenure goes, but it's getting there. Of the modern pay-per-views, it's certainly one of the main ones you look forward to. It's not just put together because, well, we'll call this pay-per-view Hell in a Cell because we like Hells and Cells. It's got its own gimmick and its own feel to it, and it makes sense as a pay-per-view, and I've always enjoyed them. Mm-hmm. So I sincerely hope it is just more of a postpone than a cancel, but that's certainly some of the suggestion we're getting.
Yeah, I mean, it's unprecedented times, isn't it? I think it would be a shame to not, have the Money in the Bank happen at all. So if they do decide not to do it in this moment, then hopefully it will still return because, I mean, to be honest, I don't even know. I can't even remember who had the Money in the Bank this year, and how that whole cash in and stuff went. But like from memory of times, it's obviously you've got one of the greatest WrestleMania moments ever with Seth Rollins cash in and stuff like that. So it is. So
that's where you can see it work really well. I'm trying to remember who won it last year. Why don't we remember that? I guess it wasn't that important.
Yeah,
but
no idea.
But yeah, it usually leads to some. I think that's the thing, because you win with that sort of shot. It's similar to a Rumble in that sense, isn't it? But it's got that uncertainty of like when are they going to cash it in, and it just adds. It doesn't just stop at the pay-per-view. It goes on. It's brilliant. But yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just trying to have a look now at who won last year's because it's become really important to me. I think it might have actually been Lesnar or something like that. I'm struggling to see the results, but nevertheless, I won't digress too much anyway. I'll just live with that. So that's certainly the suggestion, and I do hope it is just a postponement because I do thoroughly enjoy those pay-per-views. Right. So, I mean, I wonder how much work they can get. Going back to your original news point, I wonder how much work they can get done. Do you think they will successfully manage to get themselves lined up through to May?
I mean, it's going to be a challenge for them from a booking standpoint. Like, I hope they're not just taping shit to churn out weekly shows. Like, I hope they've actually thought through, okay, well, here's how the next month is going to look like story-wise, and it's going to all, surely
it's going to build up and feel like it's happening live, in a sense,
Because there are other companies out there who do tape their shit, and like TNA was a prime example. They used to do like 2 or 3 tapings like in one night, and it'd always progress the story. So, if WWE can't even do that, then that's going to be awful. Do you know what I mean? Like, there's no way we can get another episode of Raw or SmackDown anything like the Raw that they put out this week. So they need, this is meant to kickstart the next 12 months. So they need to make sure they're doing something with it.
This is the thing, yeah. This is the danger point. They can't just be lazy with it. But yeah, be interesting to see going forward, like what news comes out on it or how these tapings actually end up looking. I'm curious on that one. I have a couple I want to mention. If now's a good time to do it, and just a couple of cheeky tweets that I've seen. So the first one is Kevin Nash. So basically, and I don't fault Mr. Nash for putting a tweet up the way he did, because basically he was sort of congratulating WWE and everyone involved for a good WrestleMania, especially given the situation. You know, the usual nice sentiment. And it was met with a little bit of not backlash per se, but you know, a bit of a snarky response, as you usually expect with social media. I don't know how long Kev's been doing this, but it can be quite a toxic place at times. So the person responding was just saying, you know, this isn't what WrestleMania is about, and it's a past entity for them, and WrestleMania was the last straw in the WWE, that kind of bollocks, right? And the reason I want to mention it is because Kevin Nash's response refers to he basically says Lance Archer versus a fifth grader was riveting television, almost sarcastically, referring to AEW. And the reason I mention that is that I don't think he needed to take a shot at AEW. I think there's a little bit of hypocrisy there as well for a man who is trying to act so loyal to WWE that he's popping shots at their biggest rival, as it were, at the moment. When, you know, he's historically made his career by leaving WWE and going to WCW. And I think AEW at the minute is sort of a good alternative for WWE for wrestlers who may not get the same notoriety or fame from WWE that they are getting with AEW. So I mainly wanted to mention it for that, because I feel like he doesn't seem to understand that. Like he was, you're better with this era than I am, Carl, but he wasn't. The biggest part of Nash for me was him becoming part of the NWO and leaving WWE, when that sort of story they built around that controversy of being the outsiders. So I don't know. I just don't like to see him sort of putting down another promotion when really, you know, he knows a lot of young wrestlers. He can certainly influence a lot of young wrestlers, and to try and make it sound like WWE is their only option is a bit shit, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pot calling the kettle black, isn't it? All over. I think, you know, he had a good run in WWF as Diesel. He was a WWF champion. He'd had some decent feuds with the likes of Undertaker and Shawn Michaels, but you know, it wasn't until he kind of he blew up when he you know, was part of NWO and with the Outsiders and bringing Hogan in, and it was at that point he became a megastar. So, you know, for him to kind of, now that he's, you know, his boy Triple H, and he's come good again with WWE and all this shite, to make out like it's the only product out there. Just, I don't know, just as you said, just coming across as a massive hypocrite, really, isn't he? So I just,
yeah. And for me as well, without delving too long into this, like, he's trying to sort of put down Marco Stunt, who obviously he's not a big chap, especially compared to Lance Archer, because that's the match he's obviously referring to. But like, what's the point in taking that shot when we've seen it happen so many times? We've seen it happen in WWE so many times, where the big guy totally ruins and squashes the little guy. I think even Kevin Nash did it with Rey Mysterio at one point. So like, it's that whole thing of like, you know, it's a classic staple almost to have that. Like, they've brought Lance Archer in as a monster, and then they've put him against the little guy who could, so he could dominate him and improve his dominance. It's a classic thing that WWE have done many a time. So I don't get why he's trying to sort of denigrate it the way he is, by being like, you know, it's up against the fifth grader and all that. It's like, don't know. It's an odd suggestion to make.
Yeah.
So the next and the only other one I've got was a tweet made by WWE, which was not long before. I read it not long before we started the podcast, and it's more just, it's not really a newsworthy thing, I don't suppose. I just want to mention it because it just shows you what WWE are like. It's a little bit cheeky, really, in that they put up a tweet saying that Vince McMahon 11 years ago predicted that Drew McIntyre would be champion, and it's like, okay, two things. No, he didn't. He don't get me wrong, he said it when he was big on Drew, but there's no way he could have predicted the way this story went. This story was not manufactured by WWE, despite how you want to make it sound. This story was true. It was organic. He left because he was pissed off. He built himself up on the indies and he came back. This isn't something that was put together. He didn't send Drew out there to build himself up on the indies and then ruin TNA and come back. It was not a Vince thing. And secondly, predictions are easy to make when you decide who gets the championship. Right,
that's a very
I'm willing to buy into kayfabe, but at the same time, WWE, you're on social media. We all know how the game works. It's a bit of an odd tweet to put out to say, well, we knew it was going to happen. Yeah, I'd know something's going to happen if I was the one who fucking made it happen.
Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head, haven't you? I think he was obviously very big on Drew at the time, brought him in, said he's a future world champion, and then, you know, there's no way. that this was ever going to happen. Really, it's only from Drew's fucking seriously hard work and effort and setting himself that goal himself is what has made it happen.
That's the thing, and I'm not discrediting anyone in WWE at the moment who is choosing to stick with it, but Drew could have had a totally different path if he'd have just floundered in the mid card in WWE for a lot longer. So it was his own personal choices that got him where he is.
Definitely, and I think as well a nice little segue into my next little snippet was something that I saw this on Reddit just prior to us doing this call actually, but a very interesting little stat. So apparently Drew has now got a WrestleMania triple crown. So ultimately what that means is he's one of only 11 people. So he's the 11th person in WrestleMania history to have won the Royal Rumble prior to it, then won a world title match at WrestleMania in the main event. So it's won the Rumble, won the title, and be in the main event. So this puts him on a very prestigious list of others who have, been able to do this feat. So Hulk Hogan, Bret Hart, Shawn Michaels, Steve Austin, Triple H, Brock Lesnar, Chris Benoit, Batista, John Cena, Becky Lynch, and now Drew. So I mean, that's kind of like a fucking who's who of wrestling royalty, really.
Oh yeah, and Becky.
Yeah, and Becky. But everyone on that list has gone on to kind of become fucking synonymous with wrestling, synonymous with WWE. We've got Hall of Famers in there, people who I just think it's a huge kind of accomplishment and sign of trust that they've allowed Drew to do that. And there's people who aren't on that list, like the likes of The Rock, The Undertaker, Roman Reigns.
Yeah, massive names who you think probably should have been, or you'd expect to have been.
Exactly.
That's crazy, yeah.
So I think it does definitely go to show that he, quite deservedly does seem to have that backing. And I think, you and I will agree, we can only hope he's got the kind of storied career that the other names on that list have had. And hopefully he's, there for a long time and in the main event scene for a long time.
No, that's a fascinating one. I didn't know that. I enjoyed that, Carl. He's so almost a prestigious list to be on. That's great.
Yeah.
Sorry, go on.
Yes, so I was going to say the last one I've got, which is a nice little segue into our kind of third segment, is just another kind of social media thing. So there was an Instagram post from The Undertaker after WrestleMania, and it just had the caption, it was a hell of a ride, #boneyard match, #WrestleMania, #30 years.
Right.
So that then kind of starts, the retirement rumors going. So I thought it was an interesting one. So obviously it's all kind of seems like a normal tweet until he throws the 30 years hashtag in there. So, would you be happy if this was Undertaker's last ever match?
For me, I think it's a good note to go out on. But I feel like he could have had his note to go out on many moons ago as well.